At first light, the pale glow of dawn seeped through the small, cracked window of Jack Morland's humble cottage, casting long, tentative shadows across the rough-hewn wooden floor. Outside, the air was thick with the scent of dew-laden grass and the subtle hum of awakening insects. But inside, a quiet resolve pulsed through Jack's veins. He moved with practiced ease, his hands nimble yet deliberate, as he checked the leather straps of his weathered horses and adjusted the harnesses with a meticulous eye. The faint aroma of oats and hay mingled with the earthy scent of the damp earth beyond the open door, where a pair of sturdy black steeds waited patiently, their ears flicking at the faint sounds of morning. Jack paused, brushing a stray strand of graying hair from his forehead, his eyes clouded but sharp, reflecting a mind still haunted by the past. He whispered softly to himself, almost a prayer. Today's the day. No more shadows, only truth. His roughened hands lingered on the carved wood of the carriage's door, tracing the faint scars of time etched into the paint, silent witnesses to countless journeys. As he lifted the latch to open it, a sudden gust of wind stirred the leaves, carrying whispers of memories, smiles, screams, the terrible rush of metal and flesh. Jack's jaw tightened. He knew this routine was only the beginning. His gaze drifted to the horizon where the first streaks of amber pierced the dawn, illuminating the path ahead, one paved with quiet determination, shadows of guilt and the faint flicker of hope for atonement. With a deep breath, he climbed into the driver's seat, the leather creaking beneath him, and gently urged the horses forward. The wheels creaked softly as they rolled onto the gravel, carrying him into a day filled with memories best left behind but forever etched into his soul. As Jack carefully polished the dark polished wood panels of his carriage, the gentle scrape of cloth against varnished surface echoed softly in the still morning air. His hands moved with practiced precision, tracing the intricate carvings of vines and cherubs that adorned the sides, each stroke revealing a layer of patience born from years of devotion. Nearby, villagers gathered around the bustling marketplace, their murmurs drifting through the crisp air like distant thunder. Jack caught snippets of their hushed conversations, eyes flickering with a mixture of pride and unease. "Did you hear about the Baron's family leaving for the fair today?" A weathered woman whispered to her neighbor, her voice tinged with anticipation. "They say it's a grand spectacle, but I wonder if shadows will follow them as always." A tall man nodded, adjusting his hat nervously. Jack paused, listening intently, feeling a strange flutter of foreboding twist within his gut. He knew well enough that the upcoming journey was more than just a simple ride. It was a delicate thread woven into the fabric of his haunting memories. His gaze lingered on the noble coach, gleaming in the early sunlight, the polished wheels reflecting fleeting glimpses of the clouded sky. A sense of quiet pride mingled with dread. Each day, he reminded himself, could be the last of peace before the storm. As he gently ran his cloth over a stubborn smudge, his thoughts traced the shadowy outline of the tragedy yet to come, an inevitable collision of fate and guilt. He whispered softly under his breath, "Today's the day. No more shadows, only truth." The wind carried a faint whisper, rustling the leaves and stirring memories of screams and broken dreams. Jack's jaw clenched tight as he lifted himself into the driver's seat, the leather creaking beneath his weight. The horses shifted impatiently, sensing the weight of unspoken fears. As the carriage rolled forward on the gravel, Jack's eyes flicked to the horizon, where pale dawn light struggled against the gathering gloom, a silent prelude to the chaos that would soon unfold, forever changing the course of lives intertwined by a cruel twist of destiny. That evening, in the dim glow of a flickering candle, Jack sat stiffly across from his aging father at the weathered oak table, the air thick with the scent of roasted roots and faded memories. As they ate in quiet, a messenger's hurried knock interrupted the quiet hum of their humble home. Jack's father, a wiry man with lines carved deep into his face, glanced up with a cautious raise of his brow. "Come in," he called softly. The door swung open to reveal a nervous young man clutching a crumpled letter, his voice trembling as he stepped forward. "Mr. Morland, I have news. It's from Miss Eleanor's maid. I thought you should hear it." Jack's father hesitated, then nodded for him to proceed. The young messenger cleared his throat and unfolded the paper. "It's about Lord Roderick Vane, sir. Seems he's been neglecting the estate's safety. Poor repairs, unstable scaffolding, and hazardous conditions along the carriage paths. Yesterday I overheard a conversation where the steward mentioned how Roderick's been too eager to cut corners, especially before the upcoming harvest festival." Jack's eyes narrowed, memories flickering like ghostly shadows. His heart quickened as he listened. "They say he's more concerned with appearances than the lives at risk," the messenger added, voice barely above a whisper. Jack's hand clenched into a fist beneath the table, feeling the weight of those words settle deep inside him. He leaned forward, voice low and measured. "Did anyone mention reckless speed? Or perhaps the state of the carriage wheels?" The messenger nodded hurriedly. "Yes, sir. There's talk that his neglect has caused the wooden wheels to weaken, and that his drivers have been warned to push the horses harder on those same treacherous roads." Jack's mind spun with the implications. If the roads and carriages were compromised, the very tragedy that tore apart his life might have been prevented had Roderick taken responsibility. The faint glow of candlelight flickered across his face as he gazed into the shadows, a storm brewing behind calm eyes. "Thank you," he said softly, voice unwavering. "This gives me clarity, and a purpose I didn't see before." As the young man departed, Jack turned to his father, eyes dark, with resolve. The seeds of his quiet vengeance had been sown in whispers and shadows, and he knew now that the web of corruption and negligence lay waiting to be unraveled, piece by piece, in a dance of moral reckoning. On a tempestuous night, the sky roared, with thunder, as jagged streaks of lightning split the heavy clouds, casting fleeting, ghostly shadows across the muddy, treacherous road. Jack's heart pounded fiercely in his chest as his hands gripped the worn leather reins with desperate strength, knuckles white with tension. The carriage lurched violently, jolting over uneven patches, the wheels slipping and skidding on the slick, rain-slicked stones. The horses, spooked by the thunderclaps and flickering flashes, reared and strained against the harnesses, their hooves pounding the muddy earth in frantic desperation. Jack's voice cracked through the storm, strained but commanding. "Steady! Come on! Steady now!" His eyes darted through the blur of rain and darkness, searching for some semblance of control. But the storm's fury clouded his vision, making everything seem like a maze of shadows and roaring chaos. Suddenly, a deep, bone-jarring crack echoed as the carriage's front wheel struck a hidden rut, causing the entire frame to tilt perilously. The carriage jerked sideways, the weight lurching forward as the horses fought the reins, their muscles rippling and hooves skidding wildly. Jack's breath hitched, beads of sweat pouring down his face, hidden beneath his soaked hat. "No! Hold! Hold together!" he yelled, voice swallowed by the thunderclap. The carriage skidded off the edge of the uneven road, plunging into a dense thicket with a sickening crunch of wood and shattered glass. Twigs and mud tore at the sides as the vehicle twisted uncontrollably, crashing through the underbrush. In that split second, Jack's mind raced. He saw the jagged silhouette of the forest closing in, felt the cold grip of fear tightening around his chest. Yet, amidst the chaos, a faint glimmer of hope flickered, Perhaps this catastrophe was a warning, a cruel twist of fate linked to negligence he dared not ignore. As the storm raged on, Jack's trembling hands clenched the broken reins, eyes widened with a mixture of dread and fury, knowing that beneath this wreckage lay the tragic aftermath of a night that would forever haunt him. Dawn's pale, uncertain light seeped through the broken canopy as Jack stumbled through the wreckage, his heart pounding like a frantic drumbeat, echoing in his ears. The air was thick with the stench of damp earth, shattered wood, and a sickening hint of blood. His eyes desperately searched the twisted heap of splintered timber and mangled metal, each movement heavy with dread and hope. Then he saw them, frozen, in a tableau of agony and shock. The Baron's face contorted in a silent scream, eyes wide with terror, while his 2 young sons lay crumpled beneath the shattered carriage, their tiny bodies sprawled on the uneven ground, limbs twisted at unnatural angles, faces streaked with dirt and tears. Jack's breath hitched as he knelt, trembling, hands trembling more fiercely, as he desperately tried to rouse them, voice cracking. "Please, come back, wake up, please!" His fingers pressed against the cold, lifeless cheeks, searching for a pulse that refused to beat. The silence was deafening, broken only by his ragged, broken sobs and the faint, haunting creak of the wreck settling into the morning fog. Despair engulfed him as he clung to the fragile hope that somehow they might still survive. Yet the weight of guilt pressed down harder than ever, an unbearable burden whispering that the tragedy was no mere accident, but a consequence of reckless negligence, a cruel twist of fate that he had unwittingly borne witness to. The world around him seemed to blur into a muted gray void, where every second stretched endlessly, punctuated only by the faint, desperate plea of a man grasping at hope amid the grim reality that his life's innocence had been shattered in one terrible, irreversible moment. Over the following days, Jack withdrew into the shadows of his modest cottage, the air thick with a suffocating silence that seemed to press against his chest with every passing hour. His nights became battlegrounds of relentless nightmares, shadows twisting into the faces of the Baron and his boys, their eyes wide with terror, mouths silent in pain. He would sit by the flickering candle, trembling, clutching his head, murmuring, desperately, "It wasn't supposed to be like this. I only wanted to do my duty." His hands, once steady and proud, now quivered uncontrollably as he stared at the worn, cracked walls, haunted by the memory of the crash, the sickening crunch of wood and flesh, the metallic scent of blood thick in the air. Sometimes he would force himself outside, walking aimlessly through the dew-damp forest, listening to the eerie creak of branches, feeling the weight of guilt settle deep into his bones. Was it just an accident? He whispered to himself, amid the rustling leaves, eyes darting around as if the very forest held answers. Each morning he pored over the scarred, leather-bound journal he'd secretly acquired from Roderick's estate, crumpling pages, searching for clues, for any sign that this tragedy had been more than mere happenstance. Something rooted in negligence, arrogance, or corruption. His fingers trembled as they traced the faded ink, longing to find a reason, or perhaps a justification to act. Did they know? He wondered aloud, voice cracking, as tears welled in his eyes. Did anyone see what was coming? The ache grew unbearable, twisting his stomach into knots, yet deep within, a flicker of resolve stirred, an urge not just to mourn, but to craft a vengeance that would echo beyond mere bloodshed, a moral reckoning woven into every symbolic step he planned to take. He knew he couldn't undo what had happened, but perhaps, just perhaps, he could turn this darkness into a silent, poetic justice that would reveal the ugly truth hiding behind noble facades. In those quiet, haunted hours, Jack's mind spun with the faint hope that this nightmare might someday be transformed into a story of moral triumph, if only he had the courage to see it through. Driven by an urgent need for answers, Jack slipped, under the cover of night, carefully investigating Lord Roderick's estate records with trembling hands and a sharpened eye. The dim candlelight flickered against the parchment as he sifted through faded ledgers and secret correspondences, each page revealing a tangled web of negligence, greed, and moral decay. He discovered that Roderick's wealth was built not only on land and titles, but also on shady alliances with corrupt merchants and officials, whose greed had quietly seeped into the estate's management. Records showed that, years before the tragedy, the estate had ignored critical safety repairs, broken harnesses left unrepaired, faulty brakes neglected, and warnings dismissed as mere inconvenience. Jack's fingers paused over a crumpled diary entry, where Roderick's voice tersely dismissed concerns. "The horses are fine, and the roads are clear. Nothing to worry about." The chilling tone suggested dismissiveness, bordering on arrogance. As Jack's eyes darted across the pages, he muttered under his breath, "They knew. They always knew." A flicker of anger ignited within him. He clenched his fists, feeling the weight of this hidden truth pressing down. "This wasn't just an accident," he whispered fiercely. "They pushed the limits, gambled with lives. They traded safety for money and status." His mind raced, realizing that the tragedy was rooted in more than just chance. It was the result of a systemic neglect, a moral rot that had quietly festered beneath Roderick's gilded facade. Every detail he uncovered fueled his resolve. This was not merely an act of revenge, but a moral indictment. With each page, Jack pieced together the dark fabric of corruption that had allowed innocence to be sacrificed. His heart pounded. This knowledge ignited a fire that refused to be extinguished. Roderick's reign of arrogance was built on lies, and Jack knew that exposing these secrets, hidden beneath layers of privilege, was his first step toward turning the shadows of betrayal into the light of justice. Jack's eyes burned with a quiet, unwavering resolve as he gazed at the weathered parchment spread before him. The storm of guilt and rage inside him had simmered long enough. Now, he would channel that tempest into something more profound, a tapestry of poetic justice that would haunt Lord Roderick Vane long after the dust settled. "He thinks he's untouchable," Jack muttered under his breath, voice trembling, with a mixture of fury and purpose. Carefully, he traced the faint outlines of symbols he had painstakingly carved into wooden plaques, ripped from the pages of Roderick's own private journals, soaked in secrecy and shame. He envisioned the grand scheme, discreetly planting these artifacts along the carriage routes, along obscure pathways, shaded by ancient oaks and mist-shrouded meadows. Each symbol would serve as a silent indictment. Broken chains symbolizing the prison of greed, crushed roses denoting innocence lost, inscriptions whispering truths only Roderick would understand. As he gathered his tools, an old chisel, ink-dipped needles, and fragments of inscribed stone, he whispered, "Let this be the mirror he can't ignore." The night air was thick with the scent of damp earth and burning wax, his breath forming ghostly clouds as he worked by candlelight. When finished, he would arrange the artifacts with meticulous care, each one a piece of his moral puzzle. His plan was to orchestrate a series of clandestine acts, subtle, symbolic, almost poetic in their execution, that would force Roderick into confronting his own moral decay without a single act of violence. This was not revenge born of hatred, but a moral symphony designed to expose the darkness lurking beneath Roderick's polished veneer. Jack knew the risks: exposure, betrayal, even death. but his conviction outweighed fear. "He'll see himself in these," he whispered, voice steady now. "And in that reflection, perhaps, just perhaps, he'll find the redemption he's long denied himself. This meticulously crafted plan, woven with symbols of justice and moral reckoning, would serve as his final act, the silent, poetic vengeance that promised to leave a mark deeper than blood or broken bones." Under the cover of darkness, Jack ventured silently through the mist-shrouded woods, his footsteps barely disturbing the damp earth as he made his way to Elias's secluded studio. The artist's humble workshop was nestled among twisted oaks, shadows dancing on weathered stone walls as flickering candlelight spilled through a small, grimy window. Jack's heart pounded with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. As he pushed open the door, Elias looked up from his workbench, his eyes narrowing in curiosity. "You look troubled, my friend," Elias said softly, setting aside a chisel. Jack stepped inside, pulling a worn leather satchel from his coat. Inside, carefully wrapped, lay his carefully gathered symbols: broken chains, faded roses, and fractured mirrors. "I need you to craft something," Jack whispered, voice thick with purpose. "Something that speaks of justice, fallibility, and moral reckoning. A sculpture that embodies the fragile line between guilt and redemption." Elias's brows furrowed, but he nodded slowly, sensing the gravity of Jack's request. "Tell me what you envision." Jack reached into his satchel, pulling out a small, intricately carved wooden frame. An abstract carriage balanced precariously on delicate, twisted wheels, with figures of justice tipping her scales beside a crowned serpent. "This," Jack said softly, "will be the centerpiece, a symbol of the fallible pursuit of righteousness, of power's corrupting shadow, and the hope that even the mighty can stumble. I want it to be more than art. It must be a mirror, a silent accusation, a moral puzzle for Lord Roderick to decipher." Elias's eyes gleamed with understanding as he examined the symbols. "It shall be done," he vowed. "But be warned, such work is delicate, and its message may ripple beyond your intentions." Jack nodded solemnly, feeling the weight of his plan settle around him like a shroud. As Elias set to work, the dim glow of the candles flickered and danced, casting elongated shadows that seemed to whisper of secrets yet to be unveiled. In that quiet, secret moment, Jack knew he was stitching together more than sculpture. He was weaving a tapestry of moral reckoning that would challenge us, the very core of Lord Roderick's pride. Each chisel strike, each careful carve, became an act of silent rebellion, a testament that even in darkness, truth can take shape. And as Elias's masterpiece slowly emerged, so too did the first threads of justice that would, one day, unravel the lies of the powerful. Under the cloak of night, Jack moved silently along the shadowed forest road, his steps deliberate yet cautious, as if each one was a silent vow etched into the earth. With painstaking care he began planting symbols, small, almost imperceptible carvings hidden within the bark of ancient trees and beneath fallen leaves, signs that only a keen eye and understanding could decipher. A broken chain traced delicately across a crooked limb, suggesting captivity shattered and freedom fought for. A cluster of crushed roses pressed into a concealed hollow, whispering of innocence lost and beauty corrupted. Jack's hand lingered over each inscription, feeling the weight of his secret rebellion seep into the soil, knowing that these subtle markers would serve as moral breadcrumbs, leading Lord Roderick, if he ever noticed, to the truth of his own moral decay. When he finished, Jack stepped back into the shadows, eyes gleaming with a mixture of resolve and quiet defiance. "Let him find what's hidden," he muttered softly, voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. Let the symbols seep into his mind like poison, destined to gnaw at his conscience until he can no longer deny the truth. As dawn approached, the first light cast a pale glow over the carefully arranged signs, transforming the landscape into an intricate tapestry of moral rebellion, one that would patiently wait for its unsuspecting target. Jack's heart pounded, with a strange mixture of relief and dread, knowing that these tiny acts of subversion were more than mere vandalism. They were carefully crafted seeds of doubt, each one a whisper that might eventually unravel the carefully built fortress of Lord Roderick's arrogance. With every step he took away from the scene, he felt the silent, relentless echo of justice taking root beneath the veneer of tranquility, a morbid reminder that even the smallest symbols could wield the power to topple the mightiest of illusions. Under the cover of twilight, Jack Morland moved like a shadow along the winding paths bordering Lord Roderick's grand estate. His sharp eyes observed the nobleman's entourage with meticulous patience, noting every gesture, every whispered exchange, every subtle shift in allegiance among the servants. He had spent weeks planting tiny seeds of discord, misleading trusted maids into overhearing partial truths, slipping coded notes into the hands of Roderick's most loyal guards with misleading instructions, and subtly misdirecting trusted couriers to deliver false messages. Tonight he watched as a tall, gaunt servant, Thomas, hurried past the stable yard, clutching a rolled parchment tightly beneath his coat. Jack stepped out from the shadows, voice barely a whisper. "Thomas, a moment, if you please." The servant froze, eyes wide with suspicion. Jack approached carefully, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial hush. "I've heard whispers that Lord Roderick's confidants are planning to move against him. You didn't hear that from me. But perhaps it's worth considering. Trust no one completely, especially not those closest to him." Thomas's eyes flickered with confusion and curiosity. "What do you suggest?" he breathed, glancing around, nervously. Jack's gaze was steady, calculated, revealing the quiet depths of his purpose. "Let's just say that the more Roderick's men doubt each other, the weaker his grip becomes. You've been loyal long enough. Help me sow a little chaos, and we'll see how quickly his fortress crumbles from within." As Thomas hesitated, Jack's hand subtly clutched a small carved token, an emblem of broken chains, and pressed it into the servant's palm. "Plant this where only he'll find it, and watch the pieces fall into place." The servant nodded slowly, tension rippling through his frame. Jack stepped back into the darkness, heart pounding with a mixture of trepidation and resolve, knowing that these orchestrated misdirections, tiny, deliberate fractures, would slowly undermine Lord Roderick's fortress of arrogance, turning his pride against him in a silent, poetic game of moral subversion. Each small act of deception was like a carefully aimed arrow, destined to pierce the illusion of invincibility that cloaked the noble. The night's quiet hum echoed with the promise that even the most fortified walls could be shattered by the smallest cracks, especially when masked beneath layers of subtlety and patience. Under the shadowed canopy of night, Jack's meticulously crafted plan reached its climax. Hidden observers watched as a replica carriage, carefully designed to mirror the fateful night of the accident, was set in motion along the very road where tragedy had once struck. The scene was staged with unnerving precision. Lanterns flickered softly, casting long shadows over the cobblestones, and a faint scent of damp earth filled the air, heightening the tension. Jack, concealed behind a thick veil of darkness, observed as Lord Roderick's trusted coachman, unaware of the trap, approached the replica carriage with a mixture of curiosity and confidence. As the carriage eased into motion, the faint creak of wood and the rhythmic pounding of hooves echoed through the silence, mimicking the night of the disaster. Suddenly, a hidden mechanism triggered, causing the replica carriage to sway perilously, teetering on the edge of instability. Roderick's face, illuminated briefly by the flickering lanterns, twisted in recognition and dread. Jack's voice, low and commanding through a concealed speaker, drifted from the shadows. "Remember that night, Lord Roderick, the night your negligence nearly tore a family apart." Roderick's eyes widened as he saw the carefully placed symbols. Broken chains, crushed roses, decorated along the roadside, symbols of his moral captivity and lost innocence. His hand trembled as he reached for the reins, instinctively trying to control the unsteady carriage. But the system responded with a controlled jerk, forcing him to confront the very chaos he once ignored. The replica shuddered violently, and a final deliberate jolt caused it to lurch forward. An expertly staged moment that simulated the accident with agonizing accuracy. Roderick's breath hitched as he realized he was reliving that night, not as a distant memory, but in vivid, visceral form. The scene paused and Jack's voice echoed again, softer but resolute. "Sometimes justice isn't served with blood or violence, Lord Roderick. Sometimes it's a mirror held up to your soul, forcing you to face what you refuse to see." Roderick's eyes glistened with unshed tears, his posture trembling as he grappled with guilt and fear. The staged reenactment was more than just revenge. It was a moral reckoning, designed to strip away the illusion of invincibility that had shielded him all these years. As the night grew darker, Jack slipped away into the shadows, knowing that the poetic justice had struck its deepest blow, one that would linger long after the echoes of the staged carriage faded into the silent dawn. The shadows beneath the flickering lantern cast an eerie glow on the narrow, deserted courtyard, where Jack's clandestine presence had slipped into the darkness unnoticed. Until now, from behind a crumbling stone wall, a stern, watchful figure emerged, voice low but edged with suspicion. "You shouldn't be here, Jack," Roderick's loyal confidant barked, clutching a lantern in one hand while narrowing his eyes. "You've gone too far this time. If you think you can manipulate the truth and hide behind your twisted schemes, you're mistaken." Jack's eyes remained calm but intense, a subtle tremor of resolve flickering beneath his composed exterior. "I didn't come to hide," Jack replied softly, stepping forward, the faint sparkle of the symbolic artifacts he'd concealed glinting in his pocket. "I came to finish what I started, to make you see what you refused to confront. This isn't about revenge for its own sake. It's about justice, moral clarity, about forcing you to face your own darkness." The man sneered, tightening his grip on the lantern. "You think you're some moral hero? You've played your hand, and now it's time to reveal your true nature. I'll expose you if I have to. Your motives, your secrets. You're meddling in dangerous waters, Jack." A tense silence stretched between them as Jack's gaze sharpened. "You don't understand," he murmured. "This isn't merely retribution. It's a moral mirror. I've designed this night to show the world, especially you, that justice isn't just punishment. It's about acknowledging the truth, no matter how painful. And if you try to stop me, know that I have already set the stage for the final act." The confidant's jaw clenched, but Jack's words hung in the cold air, thick with unspoken meaning. A faint smile touched Jack's lips as he reached into his coat, fingers brushing against the carved wood and hidden inscriptions. Knowing that tonight's confrontation would carve a wound deep into Roderick's conscience. If only he dared to face it. This was no ordinary confrontation. It was a moral duel, a silent challenge wrapped in shadows, where the lines between justice and vengeance blurred beneath the weight of moral integrity and secret truths. Overwhelmed by a feverish paranoia that gnawed at his mind like a relentless rat, Lord Roderick Vane found himself staring into the shadows cast by flickering lanterns, clutching a trembling hand to his brow. The whispers of unseen enemies had grown louder, their voices echoing in the corridors of his guilt-ridden conscience. Yet he remained, blinded by hubris, unable to decipher the true puppet master behind the intricate web of manipulations that had brought his world to the brink of ruin. "Who's orchestrating this chaos?" he muttered under his breath, voice trembling with suspicion as he paced the grand hall, eyes darting at every flicker of movement. His trusted confidant, a silent figure cloaked in dusk, leaned in cautiously. "My lord, whoever is behind this has a masterful hand, but I believe it's someone you underestimated, someone who knows your secrets, your weaknesses." Roderick's jaw clenched, his mind racing with the impossible thought that the mastermind could be someone close. Perhaps even Jack, the humble coachman, whose quiet resilience had long concealed a deeper, dangerous intellect. Yet, despite mounting suspicion, he clung to his illusion of control, dismissing the idea that Jack could be capable of such cunning. As the night deepened, Roderick's paranoia twisted further, leading him to scrutinize every shadow, every whisper, until a faint, almost imperceptible sound caught his ear. A soft click, a whisper of movement in the dark. His eyes darted to a corner where a small, meticulously crafted sculpture gleamed in the gloom. An artifact Jack had secretly embedded, a silent accusation of guilt and justice intertwined. Roderick's breath hitched as realization dawned. This was no random disturbance, but a calculated symphony of psychological warfare. "Who's behind this?" he hissed, voice cracking. "You're wasting your breath," a voice whispered behind him, cold and steady. The realization struck like lightning. There was a mastermind, but not the one he feared. It was Jack, cloaked, in shadows, orchestrating a quiet, poetic vengeance that would shatter more than reputations. It would unmask the very soul of the corrupt noble who believed himself invincible. Roderick's mind spiraled, torn between fury and dread, unable to see that the true puppeteer had long been hiding in plain sight, hidden behind the mask of humility, waiting patiently for the perfect moment to strike with a vengeance that no sword could match, a moral reckoning woven into every symbolic artifact Jack had left behind. In the dim glow of dawn, Jack silently took his place behind the makeshift workshop in the shadows of the estate, eyes flickering with quiet resolve. His hands moved with practiced precision, adjusting the hidden mechanism concealed within a meticulously crafted replica carriage. An exact, miniature version of the one Lord Roderick would soon witness in the upcoming demonstration. The device was ingeniously engineered to trigger chaos at the perfect moment, causing the replica's frame to collapse and spill its symbolic burden onto the ground. As the hour approached, Jack crouched behind a line of trees, watching Roderick's pompous entourage gather for the staged exhibition, unaware of the storm about to be unleashed. Roderick, proud and oblivious, smirked confidently as his trusted engineer prepared the carriage for the display, exchanging boastful words with the crowd. Jack's breath was steady, his heart pounding not with fear, but with a fierce clarity. This was the culmination of his poetic justice. When the engineer signaled, Jack pressed a concealed lever hidden beneath his coat. The replica carriage lurched forward, wheels squealing softly, then suddenly lurched sideways as the mechanism activated. The carefully calibrated supports gave way, and the carriage crumpled with a deafening crash, sending splinters and symbolic artifacts flying. An embedded sculpture of justice crushing a serpent, a broken chain, a crushed rose, all designed to bear silent witness. Gasps erupted from the crowd, As Roderick's face twisted in shock and fury, his eyes widened in disbelief as the scene played out like a nightmare. Jack stepped forward from the shadows, voice calm but resolute. "You built your empire on lies and neglect. Today your facade collapses just like this carriage." The assembled witnesses, now absorbing the layered symbolism, watched as the symbols of justice and corruption intertwined in chaos, exposing Roderick's moral decay without a single act of physical violence, only poetry, precision, and moral retribution. Jack's plan had succeeded. Justice, sealed within the wreckage, was undeniable, leaving Roderick to confront the ruin of his own making, while Jack vanished into the morning mist, a quiet victor cloaked in moral clarity. As the wreckage of the Yale carriage lay shattered across the muddy path, a hush fell over the crowd, thick with anticipation and dread. From the shadows, Jack Morland stepped forward, his face illuminated by the weak morning light that struggled through the overcast sky. His eyes gleamed with quiet resolve as he approached the fallen figure of Lord Roderick Vane, who stood frozen, trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. With deliberate calmness, Jack gestured to the scattered fragments of the symbolic artifacts embedded within the wreckage, an exquisitely crafted sculpture depicting justice crushing a coiled serpent, a broken chain symbolizing freedom lost, and a crushed rose representing innocence betrayed. "You built your empire on lies and neglect." Jack's voice rang out, steady and unwavering, cutting through the tense silence. "Today, your facade collapses, just like this carriage, exposing the rot beneath." Roderick's eyes widened, in shock as the hidden sculptures, designed with clandestine precision, became visible to the gathering. The sculpture of justice, rendered in dark bronze, was lodged amid splinters, a stark allegory of the moral reckoning he could no longer deny. Gasps rippled through the onlookers as Jack's words sank in, a vivid tableau of poetic justice. "You thought your wealth and power could shield you from consequence," Jack continued, voice carrying a subtle edge of righteous fury. "But the truth has a way of revealing itself, like these symbols, silent but undeniable. Your neglect, your arrogance, they have crushed the innocent, just as this sculpture crushes the serpent of corruption." He paused, eyes locking with Roderick's, daring him to see the moral weight of his deeds. "This is your reckoning, not with violence, but with moral truth, etched into the wreckage for all to see." Then, with a measured step back, Jack turned and vanished into the swirling mist, leaving Roderick trembling amidst the shards and symbols, an exposed man faced with the haunting reality of his moral decay. The crowd remained silent, witnessing a scene that transcended mere destruction, a visceral reminder that justice, when rooted in symbolism and truth, can be mightier than any act of violence. As dawn's pale light pierced through the remnants of fog clinging to the sleepy countryside, Jack stood atop a gentle rise, watching the aftermath of the night's silent storm unfold below. His breath formed faint clouds in the crisp air as he gazed at the wreckage, scattered shards of polished wood, twisted iron, and the shattered remnants of symbols he had meticulously crafted. He felt a weight lift, not from his shoulders, but from his soul, an ache of guilt transformed into a quiet sense of moral victory. The scene was a tableau of poetic justice, an agonizing reminder to Lord Roderick and to himself that the deepest wounds are not carved by violence, but by truths laid bare. Jack's hands, rough from years of toil, trembled slightly as he adjusted his worn coat and turned away, his footsteps muffled by dew-soaked grass. "Goodbye, old life," he whispered softly, voice blending with the gentle rustling of the dawn breeze. A faint smile touched his lips, an acknowledgement that, despite the humility of his existence, he had achieved a moral reclamation that no wealth or power could buy. As he descended the hill, the first faint song of morning birds echoed through the quiet landscape, a delicate symphony of renewal and silent resolve. Jack knew that the cycle of injustice would continue, yet in this moment, he had carved a space of integrity within himself, an unshakable sanctuary of moral strength. He vanished into the mist as the sun etched gold along the horizon, leaving behind the ghostly echoes of his silent vengeance, a testament to the quiet power of poetic justice. The world around him stirred but remained unaware of the profound victory that had unfolded in that still, sacred dawn. An act of moral defiance wrapped in the fragile beauty of a new day, forever etched in the shadows of memory. Jack stood alone, atop the gentle rise, his eyes tracing the fiery horizon as the first light of dawn spilled across the tranquil landscape. The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of damp earth and blooming wildflowers. Yet inside him, a storm of conflicting emotions simmered beneath his calm exterior. His hands trembled slightly, clutching a small, intricately carved token, an emblem of the moral battle he had fought in silence. As the sun stretched higher, casting golden tendrils through the mist, he whispered softly, almost to himself, "Is this enough, or have I merely traded one darkness for another?" The wind carried his words away, mingling with the distant chirping of awakening birds. He took a slow step forward, feeling the weight of the night's silent vengeance, an act conceived, not in hatred, but in a desperate hope for justice that transcended mere revenge. The subtle glow illuminated the lines of resolve etched deep into his face, revealing the quiet strength of someone who had peeled back the layers of moral ambiguity to stand in the light of his own conscience. Turning away from the horizon, he cast a final glance at the world he'd fought to reshape, aware that his act, wrapped in symbolism and poetic justice, had forever blurred the boundary between righteous retribution and destructive anger. With measured resolve, Jack lowered his gaze, shoulders straightening as he began to walk down the slope, footsteps slow and deliberate, voice lost to the wind but echoing in his mind. "This is my silence, my truth, my redemption." His figure disappeared into the mist, leaving behind only the dawn's awakening promise and the haunting reminder that true justice often dwells in the quiet, unseen moments of moral courage.